everyone, welcome back to another video. Today is actually a very special one because I have a guest joining me today and we are going to do a Bookish book tag interview situation. If that sounds like something up your alley, definitely stick around. I think it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful video to watch. It's reading time here at JBay's Corner. For those of you that are new here, my name is Jaya, and here on this little corner of the internet, we explore all things fiction because, as you can see, I have a slight problem. That being said, I love talking about books with this community because everyone else also gets to enjoy reading, and the wonderful imagination and creativity inspires in each and every one of us, and it also helps me justify my addiction. So I appreciate every single one of you. For those of you that are new here, I put out bookish related content every Wednesday and Sunday with some randomness kind of scattered in between. And then for those of you that are returning, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for helping me build this bookish community. Without further ado, I do want to introduce my friend. She's an artist, she's a singer, she's a writer, and she's an avid book lover. This is Vani. Vani, thank you so much for being here on the channel with us
Happy to be
today.
here.
We are going to be doing 20 questions, but the bookish version. So if that sounds like something you guys want to watch, definitely stick around. Warm welcome for Vani. Yay! Thank you for being
Nice
here.
to be here.
So, question number one we have for our lovely guest today is, what are your favorite genres to read?
Typically fantasy and science fiction. I will always tend to gravitate towards anything that has a wizard or lasers
That's
or
fair.
aliens, pretty much.
Magic systems are always fun, and I can definitely admit that we on this channel love romance and romantasy as well. Is there one in particular that you recently read that you absolutely loved?
I actually read The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle,
Great
and
book.
that would fall under some kind of
Sci-fi,
science
I
fiction,
think.
sci-fi, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I really liked it because it kind of gave me a lot to think about in terms of just the types of skin we wear. I don't want to give too much away about the book, but I really, really liked how it took me through so many different points of view.
Absolutely.
And I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. For those that don't know, I did talk about this author before. This is by Stuart Turton. He happens to be one of my all-time favorite authors, and he tends to mostly dabble in sci-fi. In fact, if you guys watched my favorites of 2025, he actually recently released a book. It's called The Last Murder at the End of the World, and it was quite fascinating, very interesting plot point. But the book that she's specifically talking about, it's very interesting because we have a character that basically finds himself in a position where he's trying to figure out who committed a murder. And in the process of doing so, like she said, he literally has to wear different skins. The problem is, the further and deeper he gets into this process, the more he loses of himself. So it's a very interesting novel to read. It's very interesting premise and perspective. I haven't really read anything like it before. I don't know if you have. But great book, and we would definitely recommend. Also, I forgot to mention that this tag is actually by Angel Reads, and it's her book tag from 2022, and it was posted on angelreads.com, which is a really fun book blog if you guys are interested in checking her out. And she was tagged by Eli from Earl Grey Books, which is how this set of questions came to be, in case anyone was curious. So the question number 2 here is, do you read more relatively popular books or more underrated books? Like, do you prefer like an indie author? Or do you prefer like a super hyped up book? Like, what's kind of your vibe?
I generally tend to go for indie authors, but I do read the popular books too. I often ask at the bookstore, like, what's a popular book? What do people like reading? And I can kind of go from there. But I think I gravitate more towards indie because I tend to do that with comic books too, is I like to read indie.
Fair. Who's your favorite indie author that you've discovered?
I don't have one that I've currently read that I can say or speak to, but there is a store in San Diego, and they do have a lot of indie authors come in, and so I don't know if this one would be considered indie, but there's a book called Zenith, and it's a young adult novel, and it's sci-fi, and it's really, really good, and I think that would fall under indie.
That's fair. Yeah. What's the premise of the book?
That one is a ragtag group of people with a spaceship crew.
Oh, fun!
And yeah, so it's a fun YA novel.
Nice. So, it kind of sounds like it might be on the same wavelength of Monsters and Mainframes for anyone who saw me read that book and talk about that one. That was a recent book that came out, and it's also kind of sci-fi Motley Crue kind of vibes. And basically, it's about a spaceship with it's an AI system, obviously, so it has a little bit of cognizance, and its main goal is to just carry its passengers from Earth to Alpha Centaurion, where it's trying to take them. And unfortunately, it has Dracula show up on board and kill all its passengers.
Oh my god!
And so it's just the story of Demeter trying to get her passengers safely to Earth. And she and her AI doctor are consistently like fighting with each other. And their motley crew ends up being a werewolf, a mummy, Frankenstein, like spider drones, all kinds of weird things. But it was a very fun kind of
sounds like something I would read.
Motley crew. Yeah. So when he described that, I was like, I think she'd like this one. And that was also, if I'm not mistaken, an indie author. So definitely one to check out. But it's Zenith, you said? Zenith. All right, guys. You heard it here first. So we've obviously talked a little bit about indie authors that you like. We kind of talked about genres. Do you have a specific author where you've read many of their books, or do you like have a favorite author?
I don't really have a favorite author, I can say, just because my favorite authors have tended to be the classic sci-fi.
Okay.
So like I really like George Orwell. I liked Ray Bradbury, and those I don't think we would consider them indie necessarily.
No, for sure. They're definitely more mainstream now.
Yeah, and I read, I think this was way back in high school, some of the Isaac Asimov robot series, and so
yes.
And then the one that actually did stick with me, I'm sure a lot of people have read it in middle school. It's The Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, I hated that book. I'm not even gonna lie to you guys. Despised that book. Neither here nor there. But
it stuck with me.
That's fair. It's a very deep, thought-provoking book. But it was one of those books where I was like, why? Why am I reading this? This is miserable. Like, why? Why is this necessary? For those of you in a high school or a college that need to read this book, it is a very thought-provoking book. You will have beautiful essays that you can write from this. It talks about so many different social qualms and like just human growth as in general. But truly painful book to get through, in my humble opinion. So it sounds like mostly just your classic authors then, are kind of who you would gravitate towards.
Yeah, like I've read, obviously Edgar Allan Poe, Bram Stoker's Dracula. So yeah, I tend to be Aldous Huxley. There we go, Brave New World. So I'd say I come back to a lot of the classics typically.
That's fair. I also feel like a lot of the classics now, especially in the sci-fi, or back then it was like so ridiculous to think about the concepts that they were creating, but I actually think there's a lot of validity to it now in today's times when you go back and reread those books. So especially like for like Fahrenheit 451, I think there's a lot of truth with what's going on today and the various worldly platforms, if you will. I think it's also very interesting to think back to like Brave New World and things like that too. There's a lot of that that's showing up. So yeah, I think sci-fi is one of those things where even though it's pure imagination, there's actually a lot of real fear and reality rooted in it. It's very interesting to see how these like sci-fi, semi-horror, semi-dystopian novels are actually very pertinent to today's times. So yeah, very cool. Question number 4. So in this case, like we talked a little bit obviously about genres, we talked about authors. Is there a specific age group of like novels that you would naturally gravitate towards? Do you lean more towards YA? Do you lean more towards like a middle school, like kind of high school vibes, or adult? Like, is there a preference?
I would say that I've generally mostly read normal like fiction books, adult, I don't want to call it normal, but like adult, just fiction books for just any age.
Okay.
I do like some of the young adult novels, but I actually haven't read too many. I've read a lot of mostly just novels that are within the sci-fi category. So there might be books like not just the classic sci-fi, but things that Arthur C. Clarke, those types of things.
I'm actually not familiar with Arthur C. Clarke.
So Arthur C. Clarke is not contemporary, but I guess he would be considered contemporary.
Okay.
2001 Space Odyssey.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So, and a lot of his stuff is very rooted in, I guess the best word I can use to describe it is discovery.
Okay.
This idea of being, encountering something. I don't know if this is true for a lot of people, but I've heard some people that if you're really into the idea of discovery, or if you like, things to do with more science, he's a really good author for that, because he is, he's a scientist too. So I think that makes a difference.
I agree.
In terms of the writing.
I agree. I think STEM people who write STEM makes a lot more sense, because it's very researched, it's very nuanced, and I think like the processes that they kind of lay out, especially when they're talking about a discovery or like something like that, it makes a lot of sense and you can actually follow along with it. So I fully get where you're coming from. So it sounds like more adult though.
Generally, yes. I mean, I have been reading romantasy, and I will read my fair share of, even historical romances and things like that. But I feel like I generally gravitate towards books that are geared towards adults.
That makes sense. I mean, I would also say romantasy is probably more adult, guys. Let's be real. Yeah. Especially with some of the things we see in there now. But no, fair. I think it's interesting, because I think every single genre, like every single age group's worth of books has so much to offer. For me personally, I agree with you. I think adult books are very refreshing, but the only thing is, for me, sometimes adult books can feel too real. And so I feel like if I need a break and I'm like actually trying to get away from reality, sometimes that young adult book is just really nice. It's a palate cleanser. It's very light. So like, as you can see on my shelf, at least, I definitely have sections that are very much young adult. But no, for sure. I totally get it. I think adult books, especially even at the ages that we're at now, like as we're entering into, adulthood and we're kind of navigating that space, it really speaks to what we're going through too. So it's nice.
I agree. And I did children's literature for my major, so I've read a lot of, like, I've had to look at young adult books, and there's certainly, I think, extremely well written books that adults can appreciate too.
I agree.
Young adult novels,
like even things like The Giver, which I feel like you've read so much in like school and stuff, and then of course Number the Stars, things like that. They're rooted in, I think, in very important concepts or even historical events, but yeah, I definitely feel like you can see where it was hinted for a child, but there's more depth to it to perceive. So this is not for us to say that we judge anyone who reads YA. We definitely do too, but I think naturally just adult makes sense. Also, I wanted to preface this by saying, I don't know if I already mentioned this, she's an artist, she's a singer, she's a dancer, she does all those things, but she also actually has a background in English and literature, and she used to teach in that space as well in school settings. So perfect guest for our little channel here. Okay, this is a fun one. So out of the very many books that you've read throughout your lifetime, is there a character that you have related to the most or speaks to you the most?
Ooh, this is actually a very interesting question, because there have been many stages of my life where I have absolutely related to characters in books that I've read. Recently, I probably have related to Princess Nehemia.
That's fair. That's fair.
In the Throne of Glass
series. It's she's a very powerful character. She's an awesome character. I think like it's always really nice, I think in particular as young women, to read books where it gives voice to young women and they actually take that role and do something with it. So I fully understand. And especially with like, this artwork that you're creating and this album that you're creating that's really speaking to that millennial generation. I think that makes sense to me as to why you would pick her. We'll put in a little teaser of Vani's song at the end of this, so you guys can definitely check that out too. But no, so for those who don't know, this character, she is a very prominent, very powerful female lead character in the series, and well, actually, I wouldn't call her a lead character, but a very important character nonetheless, who honestly ends up being almost like a mentor to our main female character. And she's one of those characters that's really fighting for the unrepresented. She's really fighting for the voices that aren't heard. And she's really fighting for the preservation of her culture and her family and her background. But simultaneously, while she's doing this, she also knows how to navigate the world of the elite, the world of the rich. So she knows how to do it in a way where it kind of empowers both groups, which is very unique and very cool. I feel like oftentimes characters demean one side or another, or they start off very strongly in one camp and end up in another camp. The nice thing about her is she kind of plays both sides, and she plays both sides very well. And she's not doing it manipulatively, but she's rather playing it because she truly understands both sides of the equation, which means that she can play that role of mediator or guide very well. And I fully understand.
She's very adaptable. She knows she has to be adaptable. She knows that being in a different place where people don't see you the same way, that it requires a certain level of flexibility, and it also requires a certain understanding of not just yourself, but also where they're coming from. Absolutely. In a way, because especially without giving too much away, her situation, she's perceived a certain way. And oftentimes, you've had an experience with somebody from a different culture or different, environment, and you have a different understanding of who they are and all the people, but you can't judge everybody the same way. And I think her being able to be in that environment where she is representative of, hey, this is me, this is who I am, and to be able to show that and represent herself is really, it just reminded me of kind of just adjusting and adapting and growing up in a different culture myself. So I really like her.
Absolutely. It's a very unique character for sure.
Yeah.
I think this is a fair question that we can ask any reader. Have you always loved reading, or was it something you kind of developed over time?
I've always loved it.
Fair.
I have always loved it. Since the time I was a child, I think the first time anyone ever read a story to me, that was it. And then when I got my first book, I don't even remember. I remember pictures, and I remember the story being read. And then when I started reading them, I think the one I remember that stuck in my memory so much was Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah.
As a child. I saw that, and I was the images, the storytelling, and I used to write things about it. I hated the fact that he asked for her firstborn kid. So I was like, oh, I need to do something about this. Like, it was so disturbing to me as a child. So, but I always loved to read. I think as soon as I was like, okay, there's more like this. I can get more books. And then it just always loved reading since then.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that the first thought you had after you read it too was like, I need to change this. I need to go in and like adapt this story to my needs.
I was very upset about it.
So it's really interesting you said, I don't know if you ever watched the show Once Upon a Time.
I did.
But I love that show for that reason. And for those of you who haven't seen it, anyone else who loved like the fairy tales growing up and like really got into like Grimm Brothers stories and things like that, this show is so well done and it's so well reimagined, and it shows both the positive and negative energies of all characters, whether they be heroes or villains, and it shows both sides from a different light and a different perspective, and what it looks like if they all had to be together in order to survive, and how you push past the hurts and the damage that may have been created. And it's also very unique in that it actually shows how a person can redeem themselves or change the way that they're perceived simply by making choices that may naturally go against their base instinct, but at the same time, like seeing the reward of that too. So I think it was a really great show. So the reason I bring that up is because Rumpelstiltskin is a very prominent character in that show.
Yes.
And his journey in particular was very beautiful to see. And it was also really interesting because one of the seasons that they did in this show, and I believe it's 7 seasons altogether, but one of the seasons that they did focused around his story and how he became the way he was and what his relationship was with his elders and his family and like his wife and his child and all these things that kind of led him into being the trickster and the crazy character that he is and why he did what he did. So I was thinking when you said that, I was like, that would be great. Speaking of which, maybe you should write for a show, because I feel like that would be such a fun job too.
Well, since you're talking about Once Upon a Time, there is a comic book series called Fables, and I love that series so much because it puts them in our world. And I'm pretty sure the big bad wolf, he's the sheriff.
Yeah.
So, and it's so well done, and I really like that. And I also liked watching The 10th Kingdom for the same reason.
I have not seen that one.
Oh, you would love it.
I probably would. Yeah, that sounds amazing.
It's really great.
Yes.
Really great.
No, Once Upon a Time for me, especially when it first came out, I remember I was in either undergrad or I was in like medical school at the time, and I remember it was just such a great escape from reality, but it was also so fun because it just brings back all those childhood memories, but it's written for adults, so it's literally like you get to see all these characters that you've imagined your whole life as 3-dimensional characters who have flaws and personalities, and just a great show. But I fully appreciate that. The original question, by the way, before I totally derailed us, was have you always loved reading? I don't know how you guys are in this as well. I would love to know your answers too, by the way. So please leave your comments if you enjoy this video, and if you have any responses to the questions yourself, I would love to know your thoughts. For me personally, it's actually really interesting. I didn't really get into reading until 3rd grade. I remember up until that point, I really fought it. And then I read Harry Potter, and I read Harry Potter out of order, guys. I started with Prisoner of Azkaban, and I fell in love with that book. Like, I was obsessed with Prisoner of Azkaban to the point that I read it so many times I could recite the first chapter from memory. Like that's how many times I read this book, and that was probably what started it. And I don't know if you ever went through this, but I remember in high school and stuff in particular, when you had to read books for class, I used to get in so much trouble because the questions on the quizzes would be based on certain chapter lengths that we're supposed to read. But of course I was always reading ahead, and I was reading like late at night with the flashlight under my covers and everyone when I was supposed to go to bed. And so I would answer the question, but it would be based on the character's development, like 15 chapters ahead. And so my teacher would literally pull me aside and be like, do you understand why you failed this? It's not because you were wrong. It's because you read too far. I was like, okay. Like, it was great. It was so fun. But yeah, no, I think it's basically what I'm trying to say is whether you started off loving reading or you grow into reading, I think there's a space for everyone in reading. And I think it can be a really fun escape, a really great way to explore even your own inner thoughts, because it's almost like someone else is putting it on paper sometimes. But yes, reading is a great joy. So I think I kind of ended at the perfect point for this question, because the thought that I was trying to basically say is like, there's always a book out there that feels like it speaks to you. And I guess my question now for you, or the question listed here as well, is what book do you feel you read that felt like it was written for you?
So
let's go with recent, because I know there can be many.
I was gonna say again, I'm like, wait, think back. I would say, recently I don't put this up, I'm reading Water Moon right now, and I absolutely love this story. And I would say it does feel like it was just written for me, because it's everything like I've always wanted the story to go this way. Literally, I'm just like excitedly turning the page. I cannot believe that they're doing exactly what I wanted them to do. It's not because it's predictable. It's not. It's the fact that it's like, if I was in this story, this is how it would be going. And this is I've always wondered about this kind of world. So the premise of this story, and this doesn't really give it away, is that there's this pawn shop where you can pawn off your regrets. The only way you encounter this pawn shop is if you're waiting in line for ramen, and you end up not, you get through to the front of the line and you're not in the ramen restaurant, you end up in this pawn shop. It's because you were meant to be there. You're leaving some kind of regret behind. And I think I say this because there's always been, why I end up there. Do I end up there because I have regrets to pawn off, or do I end up there because I want to help the protagonist, with the duty that she has. And it kind of takes you into this mythological world, where you kind of have to defy gravity, essentially. Physics and mythology here are kind of like, this isn't, we're not gonna, these rules don't apply, and I think that's very interesting, because for someone who loves sci-fi and fantasy, this is like the perfect,
it's a perfect blended child.
It's a perfect blended. So I really felt, honestly, like this book was it was literally written for me.
Vani's also so sweet because she cares so much about whether she's ruining things for you guys. As you know, I don't care. So I will also say that in this book, the other thing that's very fascinating, and I loved this book, part of the reason also being that the main female lead character is kind of thrust into a role that she doesn't know if she's ready for. And I think that was a really fun aspect of this book too. And the character with whom she's going through this journey, it's almost like every single time a twist or a turn comes, because of the company that she has, she discovers something new about herself. And so it's one of those romances as well that's kind of intertwined into the story that's done so well, because the characters build off of each other. And that's really fun to see. I think a lot of times, like, we see strong female characters where the male character almost plays like a supportive role, or we see those characters where like women don't really find themselves unless there's a man in their life, or like you see like the male character really get developed with the females kind of taking a backseat. The nice thing about this book is they're true partners. They're true equals. And it's a very fun read from that perspective as well. And the romance story, the love that's there, it's also slowly developed over time. And it's based in mutual respect, which I think was really, really fun.
That
and
was
cool
the part
to read.
that stood out to me, was just the fact that he was, the character, the protagonist has all these things that she's going through, and very practical about it. And actually, forget how old she is, because she's so mature. She's understands the rules and the guidance that she's been given. But for our person coming into this world, it's a challenge for him because it challenges everything that he knows about the reality and the scientific stuff that he's very sure of it. But I love the fact that he accepts things as they are, no matter what's happening. It's like, okay, this is what we're dealing with right now, and that's fine. I'll find a way to explain it later. Let's take care of the situation, which I think makes him very, he's not sitting there dismissing things that he's, which makes him a very interesting character because he's not that type of, I expected there to be like conflict and challenge in that sense, but it was such you kind of don't have time. You need to keep moving and doing things in this story. So it's very interesting because that's how I would, I wouldn't want someone to sit there and like, let's have a conversation and debate about this. Like, no, let's take care of stuff right now. And I think that's really beautiful. And they are absolutely equal partners.
It's also that just inbuilt trust. Like, he never questions her. He kind of follows her lead. He knows that she knows the world better. Mm-hmm. But also when he feels like she's going down the wrong path and he offers a suggestion, or he's like, hey, I think this is a really poor choice or a poor idea, she listens, which is really nice to see. So yeah, just a great book. I think the characters are very well developed. The world is crazy. It's so much fun. Like, there's moments where they're literally going through dimensional paper. Like, it's very cool. It's a very, very unique story.
And it's visual. Like, if I close my eyes, I can see exactly
this could become a movie. Like, this could 100%. Honestly be a movie.
100%.
Like, and I think it'd be like Spirited Away kind of vibes, where either you would have to do it anime style or you could do a reality version, but like Matrix or Inception kind of vibes. It's a very, very, very unique and fascinating story. It has won awards, so definitely would recommend.
Highly recommend
Waterman. Great book. And I think if there's one other thing I can say about this book, also speaking to why it may be so personal in the experience, is that especially if you are of a different culture or a different background, our main female lead character is not American per se, and that's very clearly described. Our male character is not defined as clearly, I feel, in terms of his background, his gender, or whatever, or not gender, sorry, his ethnicity or whatever. But our female character definitely comes from a very different Eastern background, for sure. And I think that also was something that spoke to me. I don't know if that spoke to you, because a lot of the rules and rigidity that she has created for herself also comes from that background and that culture. And I think undoing certain aspects of that while still holding on to core values is something we've all navigated having grown up in the US. And so that was a really fun aspect for me as well. But I just hijacked that question. Anyways, I fully understand why Water Moon was written for you. Great book for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I know my answer to this. First or third person?
I like third person personally.
Really?
I do.
Interesting.
I kind of like to, it's like having an aerial view.
That's fair. That's fair.
Of the characters. Not to say, I have definitely read books in the first person that I felt very connected to and I've enjoyed. But there's something about the third person that I feel like I'm getting a full holistic perspective in a way.
That's fair.
Where I'm not just reading it from this person's point of view. But I tend to like third person.
That's fair. Third person, I think it's fun to read for the same reason that you said. First person is hard sometimes, especially if you don't like the main character. That's kind of my thought on it. But I think that first person can also be really fun for me personally, because I feel like I can put myself in the character's shoes. So I feel like I can actually be a participant in the story rather than being an observer sometimes. But no, I fully agree. I think there's a place for both.
Absolutely.
Are you a mood reader or a TBR reader?
I'm probably a mood reader.
Really? Okay. Very interesting. On average, being a mood reader, how many books do you feel like you have going at one time? Like, are you a purist where you just read one book, or is it like multiple?
Usually not more than two. Because I can't, I'll feel like today I feel like reading this book, and that's kind of what I've been doing, is reading when I started reading books with a friend of mine, we have a little book club thing going. We were reading, I think, 2 books simultaneously. We started the Throne of Glass series, and so we're reading that, but we're always reading one other book while we're reading it. So I know she was reading another book at the same time, and so now we finally are like, we can read this book and we can focus on this book, but we always inevitably pick up another book, just because it's like, I don't really, I love it, but tonight I'm feeling something a little bit more calm, or something. So yeah.
No, that's fair. I don't know. I think for me, it's like, you guys know this, for those of you who have been watching the channel, I systematically have like books that I read per month. So I guess part of it is mood, but also I feel like once I know that month is going to be that genre, I don't typically stray from the TBR very often. So I feel you. But like, yeah, for example, like March for me is thriller month. So I'll get really excited to read thrillers in March. And then February is oftentimes like romance or women's fiction or African American history, because I do think, I mean, obviously the month is dedicated to that. So it's always fun. No, and I love doing that. I think, for those of you that are interested also, obviously it's a little early to speak to this, but I think February we're going to finally read some Hannah Kristen. So wish me luck, because I know those are intense books, but I'm very excited to read them. So we'll see. But yeah, no, I think it's really interesting that most people are either one or the other. And then I feel like I'm this weirdo that has a mood that I set for myself and then a TBR that's within that mood. So it's, yeah, interesting to say the least. All right, guys, we're halfway through. Question number 10. Series or a standalone?
I think series for me.
I was gonna say, I was like, there's no way she's gonna say standalone. So it's really interesting because she's talking about sci-fi, and I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I feel like a lot of great sci-fis are series, but there's actually quite a few that are standalone too. So interestingly enough, a lot of the authors that she mentioned at the beginning, like your Ray Bradbury's and, you know, Orwell, like all of these people, they have some very powerful standalone books, like Fahrenheit 451, which we had discussed, and Brave New World are standalones. But I do think I think I would have been shocked if you said anything other than series, because I feel like you're definitely a series girl.
Yeah.
I'm a weirdo. I feel like I love a good series, but the problem is once I start a series, I have to finish it. I hate waiting on the next book to come out. So I feel like it's really hard for me to start a series without it being completed. And every once in a while, the internet tricks me. And I think you guys know what I'm talking about when I say Jasmine Moss was a clear example of this. Thank you very much. Do you like to annotate your books?
I think I did when I was younger. I don't quite do them anymore.
Okay. Fair. I actually am surprised by that answer with you being a teacher. I feel like it would make sense to me that you'd be like, oh, this is something that we could have a discussion or something I can think about more deeply.
I think, you know, if it's a circumstance of a book club, and this is something I want to talk about, then maybe yes. But I think I got used to doing that for classes. I got used to doing that just in general. And then as I got older, so this is a thing. Some of us English majors go through this. I don't know if this happens to everybody, but you start reading a book, you're constantly doing analysis all the time, and then all of a sudden you're like, am I really enjoying the story, or am I just sitting here analyzing and, you know, working on my thesis paper or something? So I think I stopped doing it after a certain point, because I was like, oh no, I'm turning into like, I'm starting to do reader response, and I was like, no, I don't want critical theory. It's not that I don't think about those things, it's just I want to experience the full not the effect, but like I want to immerse myself without having the
critical
urge
thinking
to
component.
Will be like, let me get on my computer, I might be writing an essay, and it's like, no, I don't want to be doing that.
That's fair. So, I think that's fair. I think for me it's quotes. Like if I see a very profound quote, I will annotate it. Or like, so okay, I'll give you a clear-cut example. This book has very little depth to it, but it is one of those books where it's just following very, very rich, like privileged children making stupid mistakes going through life. But the way the author writes and her flowery language, the metaphors, the similes, the descriptions are just so beautiful that I feel a need to highlight it. And then there's some of those things where like the emotion that's being portrayed resonates so much that I will actually take a sticky note and put it in there and like write on the sticky note like my feelings or my thoughts associated with that. But I do agree. I don't think I can annotate any book, and I don't think I can annotate every book. There's very few books that will force my hand into doing that, and if I do feel like doing that, it's usually a very profound quote. So I kind of get where you're coming from. I think for me, it's similar in the sense that I hate annotating with a second agenda. Like I think does take away from the reading experience. So for me, the only way I would annotate is almost like if I'm trying to have a conversation with the book, because it's bringing me closer to the book. Yeah. So I fully agree. Would you prefer a book that's a little bit shorter and more compact, or do you actually prefer the longer books that may have more flowery descriptions and things like that, but really pulls you into the world?
I think it just depends on the type of genre. For me, sometimes with fantasy, I like it to be a little bit longer, you know, just because it's a whole different type of world that's been created. Same with science fiction. I think those two genres, but if it's a book that is a general book, then I love the compactness of those books, especially if they're taking place in modern setting and it's a like slice of life, for example.
Fair.
Those types of books. But I think I tend to like things that will give me a longer story, because I really love to take my time with a book, and I really love to experience everything that's happening. So I tend to like those. But I've certainly, for example, the Lord of the Rings series, it's not often, and I've heard this from a lot of people, that it's not a series that feels very literary in the sense that there's a whole lot of storytelling and flowery language. He's actively created a world, and he's literally describing and telling you everything that's very important to the world. So on the one hand, that can be really fascinating, but to actually, where you're like, oh, I want to get to the meat and bones of a story in a way, it's kind of in different sequences with Lord of the Rings, because you have so much description. And there are times where I appreciate that, because now I really have this idea of where the characters live and what the stakes are for them. And I can appreciate that. On the other hand, there are times where I want there to be movement.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends on the kind of story that it is, because oftentimes with science fiction, there will be movement of some kind. You aren't often idle, unless it's like a thriller, horror, sci-fi story, in which case then you have the build up to whatever. For example, you can take the movie Event Horizon. They do a really good job of actually, it scared me. So they do a really good job of being really leading up to this moment. And it's both science fiction and horror. So I think for books, I lean more towards the ones that are longer and take their time, because it just gives me more to look forward to. But I do appreciate some books that are, especially the slice of life. Like, if you feel good after you read it, it's like a nice, short, compact book. You're like, okay, now so it's like a mood thing for me.
That's fair.
In that regards.
That's fair. I can't do an overly flowery book. Clear example, Scarlet Letter, Nathaniel. I love you. I don't need that much detail of the forest grounds. I really don't. I don't care. That book could have been done in 50 pages. It does not need to be 250 pages. But here's the thing. I think the thing that's tricky about this question is length is also dependent, to me, on the writing style. There are certain books that are so short, but they feel so long, because you're just sitting there and you're like, I don't care. Get to it. But then there's other books where I feel like you need that length, and it actually speeds up the process of the book, because it really sinks you into the world. And if you take that time, like you were saying, to really create that world and help the reader understand it in, like, let's say the first 30% of the book, where it does feel like, you're slogging a little bit because you're learning the world and you're trying to get to that space where you can follow the storyline. Once it picks up, and then it goes. A clear-cut example of this, in my humble opinion, is Sarah J. Maas. I think Sarah J. Maas books are long. Many of them, like Kingdom of Ash, is almost 1,000 pages. It's a very long book. Read it in 24 hours. Why? Because I knew the world. It's the final book in a series of 8 books, and you know the world. So being able to read those characters, reading the war that's going on, like understanding all the elements is so easy, because you've invested that time early on. But there are certain books in that series where I do feel like it was a little bit of a slog. And I was like, this is a little painful to get through. But it was, at the end, very, very necessary. And I think the thing that makes a difference for me is how well the author ties everything together. If you spend a bunch of time wasted on flowery descriptions and things like that, but it doesn't move the story forward, like you were saying, like I was saying with Nathaniel Hawthorne, like the forest description doesn't actually do much for the story plot itself. Like, sure, they're in a certain Puritan kind of vibe, and yeah, she's getting, labeled because she's an adulterer, and her child is obviously like very socially damaged and different, and therefore looked at as a witch because of the fact that she doesn't have normal growing up and exposure to the community. And I think it would have been more fun if he focused on that more so than the physical description of the land, because in that case, the land didn't do much to help you feed into the story. So I think it very much depends on how the book is being written and what those extra pages are being written for. Yeah. So I think it's a tricky question. It's hard to answer short versus long, for sure. I think we obviously touched on genres. The next question would then, I think, classically be, what is your favorite bookish trope? Is there anything in particular that speaks to you?
A bookish trope. I think my favorite bookish trope is always, the underdog getting special instructions, right? Because we can relate. It's someone that you least expect. Just even think about Lord of the Rings while we're on the subject, right? Frodo Baggins. I think the conversation around that was like a hobbit. We're gonna have him, take the ring to Mount Doom. Like, we really want to do that? But it is that unlikely. I mean, even we've talked about Harry Potter is like, we're rooting for the underdog. I think there's something, that bookish trope certainly appeals to me. And I would say maybe like unexpected romance too, where the characters are maybe not, they wouldn't ordinarily, unless they were put into those circumstances, they wouldn't necessarily choose one another. But now that they are, they learn from each other and they become, I guess, romantically acquainted with each other.
That's fair. And I can appreciate that. I think it's also like, there's something to be said about the fact that in those types of situations in particular, you have to flesh out both characters. Mm-hmm. You don't have a choice, right? Because like otherwise the romance doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I think they're like, with certain romances, I can definitely understand that. I think like in particular, when I think of like hockey romances that I've actually enjoyed, that's probably the case. It's like two characters that come across each other that never would have been around each other. With the one that I go back to is Elle Kennedy's book, The Deal, I want to say. Is that what it was called? The first one, yeah, where basically she's a songwriter / like studious girl, and he's like the golden boy of the hockey team. And then because of close proximity and learning more about each other's characters, that's where the romance develops from. That's more fun, I think. And I also agree than just like chemistry off the bat. You're just focusing on that physicality. Like that I can never get into. But I totally agree. I like the underdog story. I like the unexpected romance as well.
And it's not necessarily enemies to lovers, because I think there's a lot of that goes out there. And I kind of, I've read a few enemies to lovers. I mean, actually there's a webcomic on Webtoons that I really like called Sub-Zero. And that has that sort of vibe. They're two dragon tribes, so to speak. And I don't want to say tribe. Like two dragon, the prince and the princess characters can turn into dragons. They're not necessarily dragon shifters either. It's a very complex story. It's beautifully written, beautifully illustrated, but they're on opposite sides because those two nations were constantly at war, and the way they decided, let's stop the war, is by marrying our princess to the prince of that other kingdom. So at first, obviously they don't trust each other because it's like our two nations have been constantly at war. But I think then, when they start to get to know each other, it's like, wait a minute, all these awful things that I've heard about you are not true. You don't seem like that at all. And they really start to form a bond. And it's like, hey, maybe we should actually do something for the sake of our nations. Like, we don't want war. You don't want war. I don't. And she starts to become her own person outside of like the expectations that's been put on her by her people. Like, and it's the same thing for the male character. So I like that version of like their enemies to lovers, because I don't think it's one of those like, I've never appreciated or liked the whole I've kidnapped her and like I'm keeping her here and like we're enemies and now we became, that makes me really wildly uncomfortable. But in this, like, you have two consenting adults willingly entering into this marriage, and they're both sort of like, I don't trust you, but I care more about our people. Like, that's how they enter into it. It's very much like, because you can understand they're both sort of just like, I'm waiting for you to slip up. Like, are you gonna poison me? Like, it's like that, because they care about but they know the bigger picture is, I need to care about like the well-being of our nation. And it's like, once that becomes the primary goal, then that's where they really start to get to know each other. So
I love that.
Like that. And then the unexpected is just sort of like, oh, well, that you can think of it even in real life. When you meet somebody, it's like, well, that's actually not somebody I would have necessarily thought I would get along with, but I do.
My husband.
So so it's like, I like that kind of unexpected romance, because I think it teaches you in a way to be open and not to just completely, I will never do something or the other.
Oh, for sure.
Surprised, right? So that's
sure.
what
I think another example for that, for just simple romance, if you don't want to get into a series or fantasies per se, is Ali Hazelwood's Bride. That one I think is a classic example of that, because Misery, the vampire, ends up marrying the werewolf in trying to keep peace between the humans, the werewolves, and the vampires. And the mistrust there is very, very clear. And then the two of them actually create a real bond and fall in love, which was nice to see. So yeah, no, I totally agree. Those are also fun. And that one's also a short book. That is one I would define as short for anyone looking for a short book. Is there a book that you absolutely love where the TV or movie did it justice?
I would actually say Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Because I really felt like Lord of the Rings, even though Two Towers did some very different things with Helm's Deep than the book does, I think because we had such a clear depiction of what the world would look like, it was one of the times where when I had read it and then I'd watched the movies that I saw, I was like, that's exactly it. That's exactly what Tolkien told us. And I would even argue, and this is very controversial, very sorry for fans of The Lord of the Rings, I would say that I actually enjoyed the movies a little more just because I really liked the choices that they made. Because this doesn't give too much away either because it's the first movie and book, The Fellowship of the Ring. We don't actually see Arwen that much. She doesn't show up to come get Frodo. I think it's Glorfindel or something like that. But some of the characters will show up and they'll help the company out, and then that's it. They're gone. You don't hear from them or see them. It made sense to have Arwen show up, and it'd be such a profound moment for her and Aragorn, that she's the one that I think Liv Tyler has that amazing line, which is like, if you want him, come and claim him. And I love that. And I think they also did such a good job with the character of the way they portrayed Faramir in the series. And Aragorn, like, I loved him. The moment Viggo Mortensen stepped on screen, I was like, Strider.
Yes.
Perfect. But I felt very much like the way that they constructed the world, the Shire, everything. And the moment the Ents showed up, I mean, it was just so incredible to me that I felt like I really enjoyed the experience of it, having known the world that he constructed. Because without that level of description, I don't know that we would have such a beautiful film adaptation. And I genuinely loved The Lord of the Rings because I was so curious about the world, and I was at that moment in time because I took a class on Tolkien. And, one of the things that we studied was why he created those worlds, what he studied, the kind of, Scandinavian literature he enjoyed and that kind of thing. Recently, I don't know that I've seen, I would say Snow Falling on Cedars. I think so. That's what it's called. I read it and watched it a long time ago. Ethan Hawke is in it. That movie did the book justice. 100%.
Okay.
100%.
That's fair. I don't know if there's I'm trying to think if there's a film adaptation. I'm trying to think of one for a different genre. I do agree that Lord of the Rings was done well. I will say though, I really struggled with getting through Fellowship of the Rings just because of the level of description in that book. There's a lot of, but it's funny because I loved The Hobbit. Like I absolutely adore Tolkien's The Hobbit. Like I love that book. So it's very interesting to see for sure.
Because he was writing more like a scholar with Lord of the Rings, right? So because I felt very much like it was, if you needed to study that world, here you have your whole description. So I think, because he's like, oh, we're just forming the Fellowship, right? And so he wasn't in a rush.
Correct.
With the way the Fellowship of the Ring, because then when we get to, by the time you get to Return of the King, I was like, what? So much happened.
Yeah.
What? So
no, for sure. The movement in that book, that series definitely shows up. I think book 2 onwards. Yeah. It's just even book 1. I think once the Fellowship is created and they leave the Shire, it moves very quickly.
Yeah.
But that initial
build up, I know,
150 pages or whatever, I'm just like, I can't.
I know.
And like my husband till date gives me shit for it because he's like, you love Lord of the Rings, you love the movies, you loved Hobbit,
but it is hard.
You love Tolkien.
It's
what's wrong with you?
Like, it's completely fair. No, I think it's completely fair because it is written more like in a scholarly sense. So that's why I was just like, all right, Tolkien, this is great. Move it along.
Yeah.
Move it along.
Whereas The Hobbit is very fast. And honestly, the company of the Hobbit's characters, I think, is also more fun. I really love the dwarves. I love all 12 of the dwarves. I think they're great. I love the introduction of the mages and that. I love the moments they have with the elves, and you can really see where the initial kind of rubbing each other the wrong way started. You can really see the divide in the various clans, and then I think it really sets the stage for Lord of the Rings. But then I think if you read The Hobbit first and then you go to Lord of the Rings, the problem is you already have an understanding of the world. And so you're walking into this scholarly description of a world you already know. So you're just like, I don't care. I know what the Shire looks like. Move it on. So yeah, I think I'll probably pick it up again and just skip the first part of the book, and just after Bilbo's party, we'll go from there. But I will say, I do agree it was a great adaptation into the movie. That makes me question, though, what did you think about the TV show? Because I've heard mixed reviews about that.
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I have not seen it, so I don't know.
There is another guest I would love to bring onto this channel, and that is my sister-in-law. She also loves to read, and she was mentioning that she was like, we were really into it the first season, and then second season onwards, one of the biggest complaints that she had, while the story was done very well, the show was done very well, is these events that are happening that they're showcasing are happening in completely different time periods and centuries. And then by the time you get into the second and third season, it makes it seem like everything's happening at the same time. Mm-hmm. And that really drove her insane. But that, I think, would be a fun one to potentially watch and see as well. The other one that I was going to say is actually interesting, and I don't actually know if the book came first or the movie came first now that I think about it, but it's Star Wars. I do think the books are very, very fun to read, and they paint the world so well, but I think that was one of those where the movie was actually more fun because you actually got to see the world. And when I say the movie, I'm talking about the original 4, 5, 6. I'm not talking about 7, 8, 9. 7, 8, 9 was garbage. That
4,
was
5,
absolute
6.
trash. 4, 5, 6 was
Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi.
Correct. 1, 2, 3 I can do. 1, 2, 3 I can tolerate. I can do whatever. But I know for sure those books came after the movie, so that whatever. But 4, 5, 6, like being the purist that I am as well, that 90s kid that watched those movies on television with VHS tape, those were, I think, very well done. And then surprisingly, I think this is going to get mixed reviews, but I thought Harry Potter was done pretty well too. I do think that the movies did a decent job, with the exception of number 5. Because I think number 5, there was so much that had to be covered in such a short period of time that it felt a little broken. If you hadn't read the book, it's easy to get confused or lost in that movie. But I do think overall they did take the time to create those characters very well and showcase their growth very well and show the movie very well. That being said, I think it's a good adaptation. I don't think it's as good as the books. I do think the books are phenomenal, but I think that was a series where I can see why it's consistently turned into a franchise and a series or a movie or a show, because again, it's one of those books where the descriptions is done well and the story plot actually moves very quickly, so it's very easy to adapt to film. This is a side note question. It has nothing to do with the 20 questions. So it's question number bonus 21, if you will. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about now, like some of your favorite authors, when they write new books, right? And they've been previously selected to do a movie or a TV show. Do you ever feel like the new books that are being written, they're almost being written for TV film adaptation and it takes away from the story?
I think there are a lot of authors that might open with the idea of, I think this could be a film, and then they tend to write it that way, so when you're reading it you start seeing it like it could be a film. Mm-hmm. And then there are authors who write more from a perspective of, I'm just here to tell the story, but then when you see their style change, I think it changes how you view the book. And this is the other thing too, is if they're very well known for a specific series and you love that series, you have to take your expectation of the style of writing out when you read any other books by the same author, because they're not going to be telling the same story. So we can't expect the same thing. However, if we know they are writing it for a film adaptation, then or a TV adaptation, it changes. For example, the Sookie Stackhouse novels, Charlaine Harris. When I first started reading them, this is before it became well, I don't know if I read them before the HBO show. I think I read them just before the show came out. Like, I started reading them. It was written in very novel format. I could see like it changed a little bit, but it didn't bother me because I really, the story was continuing to move forward. So, I think it just depends on how they do it. You can see like they're giving you a little bit more where maybe some of the action sequences, you're like, oh, I get it. And then when you watch it in the show, you're like, it's literally what the author said they were going to do. Whereas maybe in some of the earlier novels, it wasn't quite as clear. We just knew, oh, Sookie is in this alley and she's getting attacked and these things are happening. And they showed us a lot more. They gave us a lot more in the show, but she got more and more descriptive as the series went on. But it didn't feel out of context or like it didn't matter or fit with the series. It felt like a natural progression.
Okay.
But I think a lot of the times though is when an author is very well known for let's just say either a standalone or a series, and then they are writing something that is completely the opposite. Like imagine if you're just writing science fiction and it's all action and it's fighting and battles and spaceships blowing up and all of that, and then you decide, I'm going to write a romance novel set in the 1950s. And
correct.
Yeah.
And that's actually,
which is totally different.
For those that don't know, Rebecca Yarros is a great example of this. She started off in classic romance and contemporary novels, and then she recently did Fourth Wing, which, as we know, Fourth Wing received a lot of accolade, a lot of praise. A lot of people loved that book. And then she came out with, Iron Flame, and people were like, okay, this is good, but it's not quite what we were expecting. And then with Onyx Storm, like, people started to get really frustrated because they were like, oh my God, this book is moving so slow. And in my head, I'm like, it's a 5-part series. So of course the books are going to slow down. They're going to show you more to think about, more to actually describe the world. So it makes sense to me, but I also feel like in my own gut, in my own essence, as I read the books, I do feel like it's shifting where it might be turned into a movie or a show, especially with the amount of praise that the first book got. On the flip side, J.K. Rowling, like, I think when she started writing the Harry Potter series, it was very apparent that she was writing it for a very specific group of children and, young adults that were growing with her as she was writing the stories. And I think that was very easy to tap into, and it was a great book read, if you will. But a lot of her newer books, I feel like, are not at that same caliber. Like, I didn't feel like the what is it called? Newt Salamander and his love interest. What is it called? Magical Creatures. Do you know what I'm talking about? Fantastic Beasts. That one, I think, like, was written more for film, and you can feel it. And I think it took away from the book a little bit. Also, another example that I felt like the books changed and it took away from the book is, for anyone who's read Leanne Moriarty, I used to love her books. She's the one that wrote Big Little Lies. She's the one that wrote My Husband's Secret. She wrote Perfect Strangers, like 9 Perfect Strangers, and they're very like thriller mystery vibe books, and they're all set primarily in Australia, and they're very, very well done books. But I feel like once she started getting TV shows and HBO movies and things like that, her entire writing style changed, and so it's been more challenging to tap into her reading. But I think she also recognized that herself, because the other thing I would say about authors is, like, even when they tend to deviate, some of them oftentimes come back to roots and how they used to write. So Here One Moment, which is her latest book that she wrote this past year, where it's talking about strangers on the plane and like near-death experiences and being told like visions and things like that. It was, I think, something that was more relatable to her earlier points of writing, as was Four Apples or something like the other book that she wrote the year before that was also very similar, because again, it's looking very closely at family dynamics. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of that is very internal dialogue with the character, which is hard to translate to screen. But I would say like 3 or 4 books in the middle, you could definitely feel that shift where it felt like she was writing for TV adaptation. So it's interesting. I think that's always an interesting conundrum that comes with that TV show film component of it. And also one of those things where it's very, very rare, but on occasion when it happens where the TV show or the movie is better than the book, I feel like that can also really play a role as well. Like sometimes I think the TV shows do the books more justice sometimes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so the question that keeps me on the edge of my seat, at least, do you like to DNF? Or do you have to finish a book?
Oh, this is tough. I think I would like to finish a book. I think it'd be hard for me not to.
I'm the same way. I think there's very few, like, I have to truly hate it. Like, it has to destroy my inner peace and my gut. Otherwise, I can't. Like, I have to get through the book.
Because if I don't like the book, at least I can feel justified that I was right and not liking
Correct.
the book.
Exactly.
Right?
And it's like, I feel like also because we do this channel and I have to give reviews, I'm just like, I can't not finish this book and give a proper review. Like, I need to finish it to be able to give proper thoughts on the book. So, yeah. Purism. I fully love it. I fully love it. What's a book you wish had a sequel?
It's a book that I wish had a sequel. I've read so many series that I'm like, what are the standalones that I've read besides the sci-fi ones that I was glad did not have a sequel? You know, I was was like, no. I'm like, this is dystopian enough. We don't need a sequel. Like, but probably this one, Watermoon. Watermoon needs to. I would love for this to keep going and going and going. The reason I've been delaying, like the way that I've been reading the book, is going really slowly because I just don't want it to end.
My friend described the same experience with Guild by Raven Kennedy. I don't know if you ever read that series, but it's a darker romantic-y retelling of King Midas.
Ooh.
So that one's. She was the same way. She was like, I don't want it to end, Jaysher. I've been reading it for months, and I'm like, girl, I finished that series in like a week.
I'm like that with books I like. I have a hard time finishing it because I love the series so much that I was getting actually anxious finishing the 4 books for the Crowns of Nyaxia. I was like, I don't want it to end.
The way I see it though is like you can always reread that.
That's true.
And I think every time you reread a book, it gives you a different experience altogether because you're going in with certain knowledge that you didn't have before. So you'll see hints of characteristics that certain characters portray or caricatures of those characters that you are like laughing in your own head where you're like, ha ha ha, I know this, but you don't know this yet. So it's like, I don't know. I think it adds a little bit of fun when you get to reread a series, but I also fully understand. Sometimes there's books where you're just like, it's so beautiful, I can't. So I fully understand that too. So it sounds like we landed on Watermoon is the one that needs a sequel.
Yes.
Favorite fictional place or setting that you've ever read?
Favorite fictional place or setting?
You would live there.
I would live there. Why are there so many books? Why are there so many places?
Okay, top 3.
Top 3. I would say the Shire is in the top 3. I think anything that's set in Kyoto, like Japan, that's a place I would love to live. And then there's I think, what's the other place that I just recently read that I thought was really cool? It's a fictional castle type of world, but it's like, yeah, so that kind of thing. I would like a fictional. I wouldn't mind, especially because it's not a dark, dingy castle, nothing like that. It's like it's a very happy, pleasant,
beautiful place.
Yeah, happy place.
So for those that don't know, Vani also loves Comic-Con, and she loves to like dress up for various events and stuff like that. So I can imagine you in this like royal palace because I feel like you would kill to live during those times with the beautiful gowns and the embroidery and just the vibes. Oh, I could see it. Yes. Go 110%. Yeah. I could also see her being the princess of the castle and like needing her moments of escape where she'll dress like a man just to be able to get out of the castle to do what she needs to do. I can imagine this too. So, and then like play the role of princess by day, like so beautiful. Yeah, I could see it. Okay, that's a fun one. I wonder if I kind of want to answer that one too. Harry Potter. I would live at that castle. I would live in Dumbledore's castle. I will love Hogwarts.
So it's a type of castle.
It's a type of castle. Hogwarts Castle, I would live there. Dumbledore's time, specifically. Dumbledore as headmaster. I'm clarifying. Not pre-Dumbledore, okay? Okay? No Voldemort needs to be there. No, he's already gone. He's not at the castle. And specifically, I want to be there during years 1 through 4. Thank you. Not 5 onwards. 1 through 4. Sirius is alive. We like Sirius. Sirius is our friend. And I personally feel like the trio is imbalanced and Hermione needs more estrogen in that group. And I would offer that extra piece of estrogen. I would just embed myself into the storyline, be a key character. And honestly, Hermione's backbone, because those boys are nuts. And maybe I'd be the one that slap Ron silly since Harry won't do it and be like, bitch, you like her. Like, come on. Grow a pair of pants. Yeah. So, sorry for the language, but that's one. Where else would I stay? I think I would actually really love to live in the world of either Throne of Glass or ACOTAR post-war. Not pre-war, but post-war when everyone's at peace. Like, I would love to live in Valeris. You have not read about Valeris yet, but I would love to live in the Night Court Valeris vibes. Specifically in the magical house that gives you anything you want. Oh my god, that sounds amazing. Imagine your best friend being your house. It'll literally give you anything. Like, I can walk in and be like, I had such a bad day at work. I just want you to make me something delicious. And the house would. And it would just be there for me to enjoy with a bubble bath ready to go. Like, that sounds amazing. That's where I would live in that house. And then your best friends are like Rhysand and Cassian and Azriel. And like, of course, like, I would love that. I mean, I would hate the fact that Nesta would be there too. But that's okay. We'll find a way to live around each other. Right? It's okay. Third. What is the third place I would live? I'm like actually physically looking back at the various books right now. Like, where would I want to live? Oh, I know where I'd want to live. Kingdom of the Wicked, guys. Kingdom of the Wicked. I would love to be one of the characters in the inner circles that's actually friends with the princess. I realize I'm literally saying that I would want to live in hell. But this particular version of hell sounds pretty cool. I would love to live there. Or the Fae Court. Not with the Fae King, but like the Fae Court's where our main female lead lives in Throne of the Fallen. I would totally live there. Like, that sounds beautiful. I would absolutely enjoy it and love it. So yeah, I think very fantastical, fun world where hopefully the furniture or the living spaces around me basically grant me my wishes and make sure I'm well kept and taken care of. And then I don't have to worry about money. That sounds lovely. That's, yeah, solid. Ebooks, audiobooks, or physical books?
My top is always going to be physical books. Always physical books. I want to be able to hold the book in my hand.
Tactile feeling.
The tactile feeling,
the
yes.
feel of the pages turning.
Yes. And I mean, and it's also, I think, the idea of curling up with a book. You can't really do that with, digital. I can't really, because I just don't feel, I don't have the same feeling. And I've read ebooks, but I find that I have less eye strain reading a physical book.
That's fair. But so, I think when you say you've read ebooks, it's been on a phone or a computer or a tablet, correct?
It's been on a tablet, usually on on my iPad. I've read it on my iPad typically. I have some ebooks on my laptop. So, but I really love the idea of being able to hold a book and in my hands. I do like audiobooks because that was my first introduction to any kind of storytelling, was parents telling me stories, people telling me stories. I like to tell people stories, and I think audiobooks I can appreciate, and I will listen to audiobooks from time to time. I mean, I listen to them quite frequently actually, but I will always reach for a physical book. That is number
fair.
one.
I think I'm the same way. I do love a physical book. There's something that's so like rewarding about being able to flip a page and like seeing the physical progression of where you are in your reading. But I have to say I now have a soft spot for ebooks, but it's only if I have an e-reader. And the reason being, it doesn't have the blue light. The screen is very different. It feels like you're reading a book. Like the pages on there are like reading a book, and you can set the font size, you can set whatever you want to wherever you want it. And there's the backlighting if you do need it. It's like turning on a lamp. It's not like the blue light that's harsh on your eyes. So I would say that has played a role. So I do really like my Kindle, and I do really like my Nook. And I think I talked about the e-readers and the comparisons in a previous video. I'll attach that at the end of this one in case you're interested. But it's one of those things where I think there's just something so rewarding about a physical book. But I will say my favorite way to take in a book is a combination of audio and physical. Yeah. And I think it's just because all of your senses are fully focused on that experience. Yeah. So it's like your auditory is there, your touch is there. Smells for me as well. Like I love lighting a candle or something that kind of feels like the vibes of the book. So you have that, olfactory component that's also pulling you into the novel or the story. And so that, or even just reading a book, I love having like instrumental soft music playlists playing in the background, like the reading vibes and the reading music that a lot of people now create on YouTube. I think is a great source to listen to. Agree. And sometimes authors also come up with their own playlists of songs that they recommend for books.
I see that on Webtoons too.
Yeah, it's great. So I love doing that. But I think for me, if I can incorporate all the senses into the act of reading, that's definitely more fun for me. But there is something really beautiful about a physical book. I mean, clearly I have a thing for physical books too. I don't know what I'm smoking. Like I love my audiobooks and I love my digital version of reading it. And I do feel like if I leave the house, that's my preferred way of reading, because I don't have to worry about damaging the book and I don't have to worry about injury to the spine or the pages. And I like to keep my books as pristine as possible. And it drives my husband insane because he's like, a book should feel read. A book should feel like you've used it. Like my Harry Potter books, we used to read them so much, all 5 of us in the household, that we've literally had books tear at the spine. Like we have halves of books that we used to sit and read because we'd read it so much the spine broke. But to me, like that's a disservice to the book. So I like to keep them as pristine as possible. So I feel safe reading physical books at home, but I do feel like when I leave or go out of town or I'm traveling or any of those things, I do prefer my e-reader for sure. So that's a hard question for me, clearly, because I don't have a clear-cut answer. But I do think that there is something truly beautiful about a physical book. So I do agree with you. What do you feel is an ideal page length for a book? Especially with you writing your own books. She writes books, and they're very interesting. She did send me a one that she had written based on some very intriguing characters that were kind of like spin-offs from the Harry Potter world, and I was like, I really want to read this, and then I lost the PDF that she sent me. So I'm gonna have to ask her for that again. But it's really cool. Like her ideas are very cool. So as an author yourself, and as an avid writer yourself, what is the perfect length?
I think, I feel like 300 pages is like the limit, like for if you're just doing a standalone, but 200 to 300, I'll just say, because some of the books do very well with just 200 pages. So it depends. Like, are you writing a novella? A novel, I feel like 300 sounds reasonable. My own stories, my own books, they are generally in the sci-fi fantasy category. No surprise there. So like my sci-fi series, it's going to be a series of books, and I know this already, and I would imagine that the first one would be just about that length, like 200 or 300 pages, at least that introduction of that story, and then the subsequent books will be longer just because they're now in the middle of the main plot of the story. So like book 1 is the setup, and then book 2 and 3 is you're really getting. It's probably going to stay a trilogy. I don't know. I don't want to say for sure, but 3 seemed like the ideal number for this particular sci-fi story. So, and then like my fantasy one, I didn't even think about book length. I was just like, I'm just going to keep writing it until it feels complete. But for me, for standalone books, I think like how much is this one? This is like Water Moon is how many pages? Let's see.
I'm going to say it's right around 325.
It's like 395, 397. Yeah. So it's close to 400 pages, but it doesn't feel that way. Like the book itself doesn't feel very small. It feels very small. So I do think like the 300 mark is a very good book length because it's just the amount of storytelling involved to keep people who maybe don't spend a lot of time reading interested. But it's also good enough to make an intriguing story feel satisfying, unless you're rushing it, so it depends on the writing style, but I think like I would say that's a good number.
That's fair. I can see that. I think 300 is a fair number too.
Yeah.
I agree. So we are coming on to our last question now. I can't thank you enough for being here once again, but if you have any friends that you would want to tag to do this 20 question video, do you have anyone that you would want to hear from, or any famous people that you would want to see do this tag?
Well,
whose mind do you want to go into?
I'll answer both the questions. For me, Christina, if you're watching, you need to get on this. So my friend Christina and I are reading the Throne of Glass series together. So I definitely want her to
I've heard wonderful things about you, Christina.
Yes.
I would love to have you as a guest if you're ever interested.
And then a famous person, or does it have to be an author or just anybody? Anybody. Jamie Campbell Bower.
Okay.
Vecna from Stranger Things. I feel like he would have a really good book list.
Yeah.
So we need to know what Vecna's reading. Come on. That's what I want to know.
I love it. And that does bring us to the end of this interview. Thank you so much, Vani, for being here. That was 20 questions with a bonus question thrown in. If you guys enjoyed this video, please definitely leave me your comments below, and we will continue with the series because there's so many amazing individuals out there. If you would like to be a part of this series, definitely message me. I would be happy to create a Zoom call where we can talk all things books together. Now, before we let Vani escape and run away from this platform, I did want to take a moment to really speak to what an incredible artist she is, and I hope that all of you will share your love and support for her as well. She will be actually dropping an album soon, and her first song is Ready to Go, and it will be coming out as a single, I believe, correct? So, which is very exciting. And I did not get to see the initial stages of this, but I have had the great honor of being there to watch it come to life and watch her baby kind of take shape, which has been fun to see, and really see her explore her artistic side and where she wants to like be as an artist and how she wants to market herself. So if it's okay with you, we would love to have a little clip from your beautiful, beautiful single that will be coming out, which I would love to share with all of you guys. And then we will also have tagged in the description box below all of Vani's information. So if you guys are interested in checking out her artwork, she draws and she sings and she dances. And if you want to get a feel for the amazing artist that she is, I will definitely tag her Instagram page below so you guys can check that out too. But yeah, it was such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
This is wonderful.
I hope you guys enjoy the little teaser.
Just some veneration. How far did we go when we took flight? How much did we pay for limitless sight? Here we are, the promises of tomorrow. Gonna beat the recessions and the sorrow.
That does bring us to the end of this video. Thank you so much everyone for being here. It is such a pleasure to have all of you here. For those of you that are new here, my name is Jaya. Here on this little corner of the internet, we talk everything books. As you can see, there is a slight fiction addiction and an obsession with the novels here.
I like that.
So we would love to have you back to not only be a part of the family, but to also help justify my addiction. You know, I need to know it's okay to go buy books and read them at the rapidity that I do.
As an English teacher, it is absolutely okay.
Correct.
Highly recommended.
Friends, because she validates me. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just need some validation. But that being said, we would love to have you back. Please do consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell. I put out video content on bookish related things with a little smattering of randomness, like travel vlogs and things like that here and there, every Wednesday and Sunday. For those of you that are returning, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for helping me grow this channel. Thank you so much for just the love that you guys have showered into me, whether it be that you guys are new on the channel and you just happened across a video and you loved it and you decided to stick around. It means the world, versus those of you who have kind of been on your own YouTube journeys for a little bit and saw this newbie on this corner of the internet and decided that you wanted to support me and share the love. I really appreciate every single one of you. Shout out to every single one of you. And I also just want to say and leave everybody with, wherever you are, whether it's morning, evening, or night, I hope you're having plenty of time to rest, relax, take that moment of self-care, and just enjoy the reading and surround yourself with loved ones and happiness and joy. Wishing you all the best in all your endeavors and in everything you guys do. We'll catch you guys on the next video. Bye guys.